Of course, Andy Mientus from Spring Awakening and CW's The Flash, but now he's bringing the cherished Jim Henson special to life in Chicago. Emmett Otter's Jug-Band Christmas is here through New Year's Eve at the Studebaker Theater. Andy, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You get to play the title character of Emmett Otter. Talk a little bit about connecting with that character and bringing that character to life.
Yeah, so in short, it's a story about an otter family, a ma and a son, who have lost their pa a couple of years ago, and they're kind of just barely making ends meet. She's a washerwoman. He does odd jobs around town. And they both really want something special for Christmas, but they can't afford it. And so they learn that there is a talent show going to be happening in the town with a prize of $50, which is a lot of money to them. And they sort of independently of each other decide to enter, but they both have to make a sacrifice for this. So it's really interesting because I'm playing a child. He's like a little boy. He's probably like 9 or 10 years old. He's also an otter, and he's also a puppet. Like we're in this world where it is human actors and these Jim Henson puppets acting together on stage, but even the humans that are embodying these characters are sort of in the same world as the puppets. So I'm playing a child puppet otter, which is an amazing challenge and a real treat to like kind of come at every moment of the show, not with my like adult human brain, but with this like other brain of, and how do they move? How do they, what is their logic? Things like that. It's been really, really fun.
And you've talked about the loss of your dad at an early age, and that's also what Emmett is going through. Is that something, once you read this character that you're like, I know how this character feels?
For sure, yeah. Well, and it was just something that I really admired about the show because I think a lot of people who have experienced any kind of loss, the holidays can be a hard time for them or a challenging, triggering time. And so I think that this show has like so much entertainment value. It's like so funny and so tuneful and so colorful, and the puppets are amazing and everyone loves them. But also there's like really some heart in it, and it's about something that I think people don't talk about enough of how hard the holidays can be for people and how hard we work to kind of like make the holidays okay for our family when there is this kind of like absence in the room that everyone's trying to be more festive than that darkness. So there's that in there too. And I was like, I love that this show can be about that and still be accessible to young audiences and still be funny and still be entertainment, but also be about something that I definitely connect with.
Let's talk a little bit about the audiences, because on the website it says children ages 3 and up can come see the show, which is, from a younger standpoint, there's so many electronics and so many ways that they use modern technology, but it's great that kids can experience puppets and stage shows, at such an early age, but also so many people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that grew up watching the special on TV are excited to see it on stage.
Yeah, and that's kind of always been that Jim Henson thing, right? Like it's always appealed to everybody. Like I grew up watching the Muppet movie. Muppets Take Manhattan was one of my favorite movies, and loving Sesame Street and loving the Muppet Show, because it was just funny and silly and colorful, and I loved it. But like going back and rewatching those things as adults, there's a lot of like pretty sophisticated humor. Like they did have adults in mind when they were making it. It was this kind of ragtag group of like hippies like making stuff that made them laugh, and thus it like works on all these different levels. And then it's also so nostalgic, I think, for such a for a whole generation of people. So it really does appeal to everyone, and not just like a way like, oh, you'll get through it if you're an adult, like it won't be so painful. We've had adult audiences like screaming at this show, like loving it because I think it works on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, I mean, especially too when you're creating content for kids, you got to make sure that there's those jokes and those elements for the parents, because they're watching it just as many times as the kids are.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point that a lot of adults grew up with this special, so they, we do appeal to them sort of at their level, but also it kind of invites you to become a kid again, like to go back and like, who were you when you watched Emmett Otter as a child? Like a lot of the moments from the movie are still in. We've kept a lot of the like iconic lines and little scenes and stuff. And so I think, yeah, if you're nostalgic at all for the Muppets and for Jim Henson creations, and specifically for Emmett Otter's Jug-Band Christmas, it's definitely for you too. Yeah.
Did you go back and watch the special, because you weren't familiar with it when you got cast for the role? Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I have, for whatever reason, never seen it. I think for like a lot of years it was kind of hard to find, and I think I fit right into that like generation where it wasn't, I didn't like see it on TV, and then it wasn't accessible for a while, so it just wasn't part of my childhood programming. So I watched it. I was like, I better see what this is. I'd listened to some music, and I was like, oh, I love Paul Williams. I love his work. I love his pop stuff and Rainbow Connection, of course, and I loved the soundtrack. But I was like, what is the story actually? And immediately, like I was taking pictures on my phone and sending them to my friends because all the puppets kind of looked like my dog to me. Like they all reminded me of my dog, and I was like, this. I just found it so sweet. It like was weirdly making me cry, not at like how emotional it was or anything like that, but just how like sweet and like earnest and adorable it was. It's like so earnest, and I find that to be really admirable. Like I feel like so much stuff nowadays, especially for kids, has to have like a wink and it has to be so slick and like technological. And Emmett Otter feels so handmade and so genuine. I just think it's so singular.
Talk a bit about spending your time here in Chicago. You're splitting your time between New York and Chicago, but you're here for a long period of time. And you were here for Spring Awakening, but that was only for several weeks. I mean, tell me a little bit about spending your time here in Chicago this time around.
Yeah, so my first time in Chicago for Spring Awakening, we were only there, I think we were there maybe 3 weeks, and it was toward the end of a big leg of our tour. At the end of the first leg of the tour, it was the last stop, and then we had a layoff, and then did some recasting, and sort of did the second year after that. So I think we were all quite tired, and I was just at an age where I didn't quite know how to like get out and explore a city. This was before like Lyft and Uber, I like didn't know how to like get a taxi, and so I remember I went to the Art Institute and loved it because I really wanted to see Le Grand Jatte because I loved Sunday in the Park with George. That was like my pilgrimage. But I didn't really do much else. I like went to work and went home and, probably went to some restaurants, but that was kind of it. But, since then, there's so many like theater artists in New York that have come from Chicago that I admire, like David Cromer and all the Steppenwolf folks, of course. I've seen so many of those plays that have come in. So I've really like grown to admire Chicago and the theater scene there. So I was really excited to get there and just to like, see what all the fuss was about. People love Chicago, and it's been so awesome. And I love that our cast is a mix of, New York actors and puppeteers from kind of all over the place. And then some like, I've learned Chicago favorites. Like there are some real Chicago, fan favorites in our show, Sawyer Smith and Emily Rome, and so it's been great having those locals around to like really take us under their wing and show us all the good stuff. And I've seen a lot of theater already, and ate a lot of delicious food. And now that we're open and finally out of rehearsal, I'm excited to explore even more.
And even Sawyer had posted something on Instagram that he went to go see American Psycho because the music was written by Duncan Sheik for Spring Awakening, and he also for American Psycho as well.
And I love American Psycho. I weirdly saw it a lot of times. I went to, because I know Duncan, I went to a workshop of it in New York before they did the London production. Then I saw it in London at the Almeida. And then I saw it on Broadway, of course. I knew almost everyone in it. I feel like it was a bunch of pals. And I just thought that show got like a bad shake. I feel like people didn't get it or didn't like, I don't know. I think it's so good. I think it should have lasted longer, and there's nothing else like it. And I love Duncan's work on it and the way he blended those, like there's like 80s tunes from the radio in it, also with his original score kind of seamlessly. And so when I heard that like any production of American Psycho was happening, I was like, I must see this. It's so rarely done. And then Sawyer knew people in it, and so we went, and it was a blast. It was after you see Emmett Otter, see American Psycho, because
exactly. And POTUS said
it couldn't be more different, and they're definitely not for the same audiences. But
yes, do not bring the kids to American Psycho. No,
maybe not.
And then POTUS too at Steppenwolf. That's a great production as well too. I'm not sure if you had a chance to check
I haven't
that
seen
out.
that yet, but it's on my list. Yeah.
Awesome. And especially too, during the holidays, so many people are traveling to Chicago. And Emmet, is right downtown. There's so many holiday things to do. Have you been getting a lot of the families from out of town who are experiencing, getting to the joys of going to see theater while they're visiting family as well?
Yeah, for sure. We've had a lot of. It turns out there are Emmett Otter like super fans. Like people come from quite a ways away to see the show, which is really awesome. And we're like right across from Millennium Park. You can see the big tree right there. We're a couple blocks from Macy's. You could go see Santa. You could really make a day of it, and I encourage people to do so. You could have a whole Christmas day.
Yeah, and especially too, that you bring up a good point that sometimes, being from Chicago, you forget that people travel here as a destination, or in New York, that you're like, these are just the things you're accustomed to, but you forget that people drive hours or make their holiday trips. Like, we want to come here and see the show. So, kudos to everybody who makes those plans, because this is such a wonderful show to have here in our city.
Totally. Yeah, we love them.
Awesome. Well, Andy, thank you so much for your time today. Again, Emmett Otter's Jug-Band Christmas, playing here through December 31st at the Studebaker Theater, EmmettOtterLive.com for tickets. Enjoy the rest of your time, and happy holidays to you.
Thanks. Happy holidays to you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.